Welcome to Crime in Court. This is the Delphi trial. We are reading through the transcript because Judge Gull banned cameras and we did not get to see it streamed. Or we didn't get any audio either. So, unfortunately, all we have is the transcript. So, fortunately, we do have that and we are reading through that. We are on the state's case, part three. So, we just heard from Becky Patty, who is the grandmother of Libby, and then Kelsey Siebert slash German. She's formerly German and she is Libby's sister. She's the one that dropped them off that day at the trails. And we heard from her in the last stream. So this is today we're going to be hearing from Derrick German, who is Libby's father, and then Anna Williams, who is Abby's mother. So let's get to it. And please hit the like button if you haven't done so. All right, let's get started. So where we left off last was Kelsey was leaving the stand, and then Ms. Diener for the state is calling Derrick German. So Derrick German, like I said, is the father of Libby and lived in the home with Libby, Becky, and Mike Patty, and Uncle Cody, and the Cody Patty, and then also Kelsey. Did I say that? I think, yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's go on. So the state says that they would call Derek German. The witness is sworn in. Ms. Diener says, Judge, just a quick question. With the prior witness, the exhibit that I only had one of and we passed, if I make extra copies, can we? The court says, absolutely. She's so nice, isn't she, on paper? Ms. Diener says, provide them for the folders? Yes, absolutely. I am totally like exaggerating because I think she's an evil, can't say all those words that I'm thinking in my head on YouTube. Ms. Diener says, okay. Now the direct examination begins. Would you please state your full name? Derek German. And do you live around Delphi? Yes. Did you grow up in this area? Yes, my whole life. And did you graduate from Delphi High School? Yes. And in 2017, specifically February, where were you living? Just outside of Delphi, towards Rockfield. Were you living with family? Yes. Tell us who you were living with. My mom, my stepdad, so that's Becky and Mike Patty, and my two daughters, Libby and Abby. And that would be Mike and Becky Patty? Yes. And Kelsey and Libby? Yes. Did you have a job outside the home at that time? Not full time. I just small jobs. He forgot to say that Cody Patty lived here too, his brother. Okay. Would one of those jobs have been helping your mother with the business? The uh what does she have? Some assessing business? Yes, he says. Are you familiar with the business she has at a home that she had at the home office? So it's in her, what did they say? They turned the garage or shed or something into her home office. He says, yes. Okay, what kind of work would you do for her? I'd go and take pictures for her. And when you weren't doing that, what kind of interaction did you have with Libby or Kelsey? I just did a lot of running for Libby. She always forgot something. I'm assuming running around, he means. Okay, and where would you be running to or from? The school. Were you familiar with her activities that were school related? Yes. She was in a lot of activities. Okay, can you name some of those? Swimming, soccer, band, volleyball, softball. Okay. And so what kind of things would she have you running for? Swimsuits or just food? She'd want some food before the game because she'd just stay after school. Okay. So how did you and Libby communicate? Would she call you on the phone? Would she text you? Did she Snapchat you? No, I didn't have Snapchat, but she'd text. And so that was the preferred method between the two of you, texting? Yes. Was that the same for you back to her? Would you text or call, or would you call? I'd I would text. I would always try to call because I didn't like the text, but that didn't work so well. No, she'd just say, text me back. Kids. All right. And did you know Libby's friends to some extent? Yeah, some of them. Did you know Abby Williams? Yeah, I ran to her house a lot. In your opinion, did they spend a lot of time together back in 2017 and 2016? Yeah. And are you familiar with Abby Williams having spent the night at the house where you were living with Libby the night before she went missing? Yeah, I picked her up. So he picked up Abby and brought her back to their home that night. Okay, and was there anything that you remember of note the day before? What were the kids doing if you were even around? The day before? Yeah, I had to pick Libby up from an overnight at another friend's house, and then we went straight to Abby Williams' house to pick her up. Okay, and then they were at the school or the house for the evening? Yeah. And that morning, do you remember anything about the morning of Monday, February 13th? I got up and made them breakfast. What do you remember about that? Banana pancakes, that's what I made. They left me the mess to clean up. Ooh, that sounds good. Chocolate banana pancakes with some uh walnuts on top. That sounds really good. And some whipped cream. Yum. Sorry. Okay. And were you aware of what they were doing after breakfast? They said something about painting a desk, but okay. You remember something about painting a desk? Where would that have been? In the garage. Is that the same garage where your mother had her office, or is there? Yes, like another garage. No, it's the same garage. So this is like a multi-use room where it's an office, it's a room to do art and not necessarily art, but like painting and doing like your household things like you would do in a garage. So it's really used for both. Um, he says yes, that's the garage. He says no, it's the same garage. Did they ask you to take them anywhere? No. And at some point, did you leave the house? Yeah, I had to go take pictures for mom. Did you have any idea when you left? Uh, did you have any idea of when you left? Sorry, of when you left. 20 minutes after 1. Let me get one sip of water here. Hold on. So tell us about what you were doing or what you were going to go take pictures of for your mother. I had to take original photos of comps for an appraisal, and there were 18 houses, and I had to take pictures of in Frankfurt. Appraising, that's what she does, appraising homes. I was thinking assessor, appraiser, whatever. Um, I knew it was an A word. And so, did you go straight to Frankfurt? Yes. Did you have a list of addresses? Yeah, I had a map, and they were all on the map. Oh, okay. And so, when you leave the home, do you have any obligation to pick up Libby and Abby from anywhere? No. And did that change shortly after? Yeah, about halfway to Frankfurt, she called me. Okay, so he wasn't home when she asked. He called. So he did leave before. So that comment that I got confused about by Becky Patty about them leaving before uh the girls, because I thought she went inside to go ask him if he would pick her up, but I guess he had already left. So she went inside to call him and then asked if she could pick him up. I don't know if you guys remember that part of Becky Patty's testimony. Do you remember that being a phone call as opposed to a text? It was a phone call. And what was she asking you to do? Pick her and Abby up from High Bridge on the way back from Frankfurt. At that point, what did you know about the High Bridge Trail? I had dropped Kelsey and Libby off there one other time before, and I'd never been back since. So you knew where the drop off was because you had taken Kelsey and Libby there. Yes. Okay. Had that been long ago prior to February 13th of 2017 or close in time? Yeah, well, at least the summer before. I don't remember exactly when. And so what did you tell Libby about picking her up? That I had 18 pictures to take and I'd probably be a couple hours, and she said no problem, we'll just do some exploring. So did you take pictures of 18 houses? Yes. And then did you go directly back to the Delphi area? Yeah, I went straight to Highbridge. Based on where the pickup or but based on where the drop off or pickup point is for the Highbridge, did you have to pass that area when you went to Frankfurt? No. Did you have to pass, let's see, when you came back, would you have been going past, are you familiar with Hoosier Harvest Store? Yeah. Okay. When you come back to the pickup spot, would you have driven past the Hoosier Harvest Store? God, I can't say those words. It's a hard word, or it's a hard name. Anyways, the witness says, no, I come from the opposite direction. Okay. Now you said that you had dropped your daughters off there, but you had never been out there? Right. So there's a path that's a walking path. Had you ever been on the walking path? No, not before that day. And you had not been on the abandoned railroad? No. Bridge? So tell us about what you did on your way back to let Libby know that you were going to be picking them up. I tried calling her when I was a couple minutes away to let her know to start heading back towards the entrance. And you were calling, not texting? Correct. Did you get an answer? No. Okay, did you call again? Yeah, when I got to the entrance. When you got to the entrance, were there any other parked cars? Yes. And you said you called when you got there, no answer? Right. And then what did you do? So I got out and started walking back to the trail. And did you go to the left toward High Bridge or did you go to the right toward Freedom Bridge? No, I went forward down to I ran into somebody when I got to the trailhead where all the trails come together, and I asked him if he had seen two teenage girls, and he said no, so I took a different direction. Did you know the man that you ran into? No, I did not. Was he by himself? Yes. Do you know who he is today? Yeah, Dave McCain. And how did you figure that out? Somebody told me who he was later on. So you personally don't know Dave McCain? No. And so you asked him if he saw teenage girls, and he said no. Why did that cause you to go toward Freedom Bridge? Because if they weren't down there, I was gonna go a different direction to try and find them. So he was coming from the High Bridge side? Yes. And what time would this have been? When did you start calling, if you know? At 3:11, I think was the first when I crossed Wilson's Bridge, and then 2 minutes later I got to High Bridge. So about three, got to the actual entrance? Yeah. Okay. And you actually looked at your phone data to know that time, is that correct? Yes. So you walked toward Freedom Bridge. At first, I walked down towards the water. Oh, okay. You went down towards the water. So there's another trail? Yeah, it's a short one that goes just down to Deer Creek. Okay. Did you see anybody down there? No. And where did you go from there? I came back up the hill and then towards Freedom Bridge and walked down to Freedom Bridge. Are you still calling Libby's phone at this point? Yeah, a couple times. And what were you driving at this time? A Subaru station wagon. What color was it? White. Do you go down to Freedom Bridge? You go down to Freedom Bridge, you come back, then what do you do? I come back and went back to the car and then I started calling. Well, I think I called mom first. I love how he calls her mom, not my mom. I called mom first when I got to Freedom Bridge, and she hadn't heard anything from them. So I walked back to the car and called again, and still no answer. So then I think I called mom back again after that. When you say mom, you're talking about Becky Patty, right? Yes. Okay. Were you calling for the girls at any point, like yelling their names? Yes. And where were you doing that? Just on the trail. So, in all the directions that you had gone, you were yelling for them? Yes. And you got no response. Correct. That's heartbreaking. Like, just panic inducing, heartbreaking. Did you at some point then walk to the high bridge? Yeah, I got back out of the car. I sat there for about 15 minutes and still nothing, so I got out of the car and walked. Then I walked back to High Bridge. Did you see people either on your way or at the High Bridge? Well, while I was sitting in my car, that's when Dave McCain ended up coming back and leaving. And two kids pulled up and they walked back to High Bridge, and that's when, whoops, sorry, and that's who was back there when I got to High Bridge. Two, two kids. Okay, so by the time you walked to High Bridge, Mr. McCain is gone. And when you get to High Bridge, do you cross the bridge? No. And at some point, do other family members arrive? And if so, when? Yeah, as soon as I got to High Bridge, they were sitting on the first little deck on the bridge, and I asked them if they had seen anybody, and they said no. And that's when Kelsey and Cody came up behind me. They had gotten there, and okay, so we've all looked at a video of the bridge. I want to use the same terminology. You say kids are on the deck of the high bridge. Is that a platform that extends out off the bridge? Yes. Okay, and you're calling that a deck? Yeah, it's just about 4 foot by 6 foot place where you could step off the side. Okay, and these kids that you saw out there, boys, girls, can you tell? A boy and a girl. So who is it? Like, how old are they? You're just saying, calling them kids, like 7-year-olds out there? Like, that's way too young. Like what? How old were they? You're calling them kids, a boy and a girl. So, obviously they're minors, but I have questions about how old they are. And did we ever identify them? Anyways, so was it from your family then? Who from your family arrives behind you? Kelsey and Cody, my brother. Interesting. At that time, do you recall that there was a barricade between the path and the abandoned railroad trestle? Yes, there's an I-beam that goes across. But could a person walk around it? Yeah, around it. You could step under it because it's about this high, and he indicates how high. And at that point, do you have a conversation with Kelsey and Cody? Yeah, it was brief. They said they were going across the bridge. And then, what did you do? I walked back towards the car. And what did you do back at the car? My sister was parked there at the entrance. I got in her vehicle and tried to figure out what to do next. Okay. Did you see your mother or Mike Patty at the trail when they came to help look? Yeah. Anyone else from your family that you recall? Not a Mom pulled up and parked across the road, was talking to AT&T, and T, and then Mike pulled up and parked across the road on the other side a little just shortly after that. So was the area of the trailhead across from Mears getting kind of full at that point? Yeah, okay. It was. There was your vehicle, the two kids that came, did they come on different they were on one was on a moped and one was on like a Ranger Razor. Okay, and so they're taking up parking spaces. You said your sister arrived and was she in the car? Yes. All right, so there's two cars and a couple of ATVs or scooters, and then any other cars on that side? Is the parking area taken up at that point? Yeah, that's why Mom parked across the road, like kind of in the ditch. Oh, and then Mike did as well? Yeah. After you meet with your sister at the car, do you go back out on the trail? Yes. And did you at any point go to the police station? Yeah, we were on the when I got back out and went down the trail, I don't even think that I made it to the end. I don't remember if that's when the cops and people started showing up, and then it's shortly after that that they said that they wanted us to go to the sheriff's department. So you never ended up or made it all the way back out to the high bridge again. No. When you went to the police station, do you think it was still light out? Yes. And did you look for them anywhere else? Yeah, my brother and I, we ended up going and driving around town looking. Was that before or after going to the police station? After. Okay, what kinds of places were you looking for the girls? Other parts of the trail that go through town, like down by the canal and over the bridge behind Pizza Hut. And did you at some point go back out to the Monon High Bridge Trail? Yeah, my car was there. So Cody and I went back out there and I went looking again. So when you left to go to the police station, you were not driving your car? I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure I left my car there. Okay, and then your recollection is that Cody brought you back? Yeah, I rode with Cody in town and then he brought me back to my car. And so, what did you do from there with regard to searching for the girls? I walked back down to High Bridge and searched the woods off to the left. And so, what did you do, or what did you use to help you search in the dark? My little flashlight. And where did that come from? I just always have one in the vehicle. Were you searching for by yourself at that point? Yes. Did you know if Cody was searching as well? I don't remember. I'd like to show you a map of the area. Derek, I'm making reference to States Exhibit 3. It has a sticker up here. It's a picture of the area. Do you recognize it as the areas that shows the high bridge? Yes. Okay, would you be able to come down here and point out the area where you were looking, please? Yeah, I did not come across the bridge, so I stayed up in the area up here. Okay, so I want you to turn to your side so that the jury can see the picture, but also see where you're pointing at, okay? Okay. All right, would you agree that this is the trail? Yes. Okay, and so where did you leave the trail before the Monon High Bridge? Just right at the High Bridge. Okay, and what direction did you go? I went back this way. I just wove my way through the woods. Okay, this area through here, can you go down by the water? It's pretty steep and it's high. Okay, and so did you go down by the water here? No. All right. So with your finger, indicate to the jury what area you searched the day that they went missing. I searched all around in this ravine. Okay, and point out for the jury and the court where the ravine is. Right here. Okay, so there's a kind of a dark area on the picture. Would you agree? Yeah. And what is this area up here? A cemetery. Okay, and so the ravine runs south from the cemetery? Yes. And when you're out there, is that an area that you could have passed over and continued to look? No, it was midnight, so it was pitch black and that's a big ravine. Okay. Was it easy to go through this area are there trails? No, it's woods. Okay. And so with your flashlight, you said from your car, how much area could you see in front of you? About 10 feet. And you're coming from the trail here, right before the bridge? Yes. And this also is a high bank? Yeah, all around there. That is Okay, all the way on the north side of the high bank. So you come around here. How do you go back? I walked back to the trail just right around the edge, and that's when they said that they were shutting the search down until morning. Okay, when you were searching this area, what time of night are we talking about? 10, 11, 12? And could you see flashlights of other people searching? Over here, he indicates on the map. And you're pointing to an area south of the water, south of Deer Creek. Is that right? Yes. So he saw flashlights of searchers, or so he thinks, he assumes, somewhere south of Deer Creek, across the water from where they all were. All right. So um, he says yes. And would that be the area under the high bridge? Yes. Okay. And you've never crossed this? No. And so you've never been on the bridge to see the aerial look, right? No. Okay. But you could see flashlights over there? Yeah, it was all up, all lit up because the fire truck was out. Okay, and this is on the 13th, the day that they go missing. Yes. So if these are searchers, I just want to say, if these are searchers all over there in that area where the girls were found later the next morning, did they just miss the girls? Because the state's theory is that Richard Allen took their lives at that 3 o'clock time, that, short window of time between the video, the down the hill video, and then um, he gets spooked by the Brad Weber van coming down the road and supposedly uh loses the nerve to essay them. So instead he just takes their lives and goes home and never comes back. So those girls were supposedly never moved according to the state. So this is kind of a big deal. If there were flashlights in that area and people were all looking in that area, how did the girls end up there later? That's what I want to know. So he says it was all lit up because the fire truck was out. And this is on the 13th, the day that they go missing? Yes. Okay, did you see any flashlights to the east of the ravine? No. And you said you go back to the trail, and do you head back to your car at that point? Yeah, we went to the car at that point. Okay, on the next day. Who's we? Oh, went to the car. Went to the car at that point. No, no, we. Sorry, I thought I saw we. Okay, on the next day, so Tuesday, February 14th, did you participate in the search? Yes. And where did you go to begin the search and how did you participate? We went to the city building and they put us all up in groups and gave us an area to search. Okay. Were you given a search area? This area. The same one. Yeah. And it ended at the ravine. Okay. So the same area that he was searching the night before is basically where he got again. Okay. Did they give it to you on a map or did they have a big picture? Yeah. And say, this is yours. And there was a map. Like we all got in our groups and they gave one person, a map of where to go. Okay, how many to start to look? Sorry, go ahead. And there was probably 10 of us. In your group? Yeah. So on Tuesday, the 14th, you go back out to the High Bridge and you're to search the same area. Yes. And how do you get to the area the second day? I drove and we parked down by the CPS building. Okay, which is farther back off the map? Oh, sorry, that was the question. Which is farther back off the map? Yes. And how did you get to your new area? We walked. I mean, our search area was like here, and he indicates on the map. And when you pointed back up there to the area, you're saying it's like the entrance? He says it's like the entrance. Sorry, this is confusing because he's cutting himself off and it's short, quick answers here. And the entrance, okay, so you recognized it on the map. Yeah. And so how did you get from the CPS building to the entrance? Walked. On the trail or on the road? On the road. So when you enter the trail at that point, are you searching any of the field's open area? No, we just searched the woods back. Okay. So the woods along the trail on the way? Yes. When you get to the area that opens up to a bigger wooded area, are you spreading out? Yes. And is anybody with you as you do your path? My daughter Glenna was with me. She stayed with me the whole way. Okay. So he has another daughter, Glenna? So could you indicate for us that then what area you searched on the second day? Well, when we got back to the woods, we stayed, here, like along the field. Okay. And so go ahead and how far did you go? We made it all the way back to the ravine. Okay. What happens when you get to the ravine? Well, I ran into my aunt and we stood there and talked for about 5 minutes because I'd seen everybody else walking back to the entrance because when we got done, we were supposed to go back and get a new search area. Okay. What's your aunt's name that you ran into? Melissa. And what was her last name at the time? Marchand. Okay. If I said that Becky testified that it was her sister Melissa Lowery, are we talking about the same person? Yes. Okay, all right. So you see Melissa? Yeah. Was Melissa in your group? No. Do you know where she was supposed to be searching? No, I think she was just out there searching. I don't know if she was in a group. Okay, but you come across here and you're with Glenna, your daughter. Yes. And you run into Melissa? Yes. Where are you when you run into Melissa? Like right here at the edge of the ravine. And so, do you know what area she had come from? She came up behind us. Oh, behind you. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then where did you go from there? I said we have to get back to the entrance. The rest of the group was already about. I could see them in the group in the field going back, and she said, well, I'm going to go back and check down there. Okay. But she went down in the ravine. So she continues this direction? Yes. Okay, the area up here by the field and cemetery, is it flat up here? Or do you know? I don't really remember exactly where it starts getting real steep, but I was pretty close to the cemetery. Okay, you could see that there's a cemetery there. Yeah, but it was still too steep in your opinion to cross. Yeah. Okay, all right. You can have a seat. After you separate from Melissa, how do you learn that Libby and Abby have been found? By the time I got back to the entrance, there was already a murmur, something, I could tell something was up. So did someone specifically tell you? No, I just heard Mom screaming. She had heard something. When you got back to the entrance, then did you see your Aunt Melissa there? Some come running off or she came running off the trail screaming also. And do you then go somewhere where you actually receive official notification that they are deceased? Not, I think I saw the coroner and about 12 cop cars drive by, so I knew. So I found out where Kelsey was at. You called Kelsey? Yeah. Did you go meet with her? Yeah, my dad took her back to his house, so I went there. Are we talking about Brad German? Yes. I don't want to embarrass you, but you're a big man, and it seems like that would have been a difficult area to traverse. Would you agree? Yes. Is he big and tall, like tall, or is he big, like, that's a kind of a not a very appropriate question to be asking about someone's weight. You could have just said, is it an easy area to traverse? You didn't have to add in the insult, but cool. I guess that's how it was in the 90s. So, was it hard then when it was dark? It was harder. Okay. And you're confident that you did not see on the first night any flashlights of people looking on the north side of the creek to the east of the ravine. Yeah, I don't remember seeing anybody over there. When did they ask that? So he did before see flashlights and now he's not seeing flashlights? Okay. Whoops, I didn't mean to double click on that. Made a bubble pop up. Anyways, all right, so that was it. And Ms. Diener says nothing more. So let's move on now to the cross examination of Derek German. Mr. Baldwin, for the defense, says, and you were searching, you said from like 10 p.m. to in the area, 10 p.m. to midnight area. When we went back, yeah. Okay, but you don't know who was searching in that area before that? No. Okay, I wanted to kind of help. I think it's a little difficult still to understand where everything is. So I wanted to ask if I'm on the Mears Trail, the Mears entrance, do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. And if you walk down the Mears entrance, kind of where that, oh, you weren't here for that. And now you're at the main trail, you know where I'm talking about? Yes. And if you turn right, where are you going? Freedom Bridge. And what does the Freedom Bridge look like? It's a big blue bridge. Big blue bridge. Okay. So you turn right off Mears entrance. You're going to head down to Freedom Bridge. And there's another bridge beyond that, even, isn't there? Right behind the Mears or the Freedom Bridge. What's like is it called the Railroad Bridge? You know what I'm talking about? Oh, oh, okay. He says no. Okay, that's fine. So if you turn right, you go to the Freedom Bridge. If you turn left, you're headed towards High Bridge, the High Bridge, right? And if you go straight, you go down the trail and you win. It goes down to Deer Creek. But that's not paved or anything. That's just kind of a dirt trail and there's, right, branches everywhere. So I want to make sure I got this correct. You ran into Dave McCain, who you later found out was Dave McCain, coming from the High Bridge side where you got to the Mears, from the Mears entrance to the place where you can either go right, left, or straight. Correct. And you think this is at 3:11? No. 3:11's when I called the first time to let her know I was almost there. Oh, okay. So what time would this have been maybe? Maybe 25 after. So 3:25 or 25 after. Okay. So you see Dave McCain at 25 after 3 p.m. coming from the High Bridge side. Is that correct? Correct. Great. Okay. And he said to you, I think is what he said, he didn't see anybody. Is that right? He said he saw a couple like down there taking pictures. Okay. He saw a couple down there. Yeah. Did he say he heard any screams? No. You said that there were lights when you were there between 10 and midnight. You said there were lights, lots of lights, not flashlights, but other types of lights, right? Yeah, there were. They had some big lights set up on the other side. Okay, so if this, I believe, is the Freedom Bridge, is this heading over to the Freedom Bridge, correct? This way? No, that's High Bridge. Thank you. I do that all the time. High Bridge. Thank you for correcting me. This is if the mirror's entrance is somewhat somewhere over here, right? Yeah, it's basically the edge of the picture right there. Yeah, you go on here and then you go down here. That's where you indicated where McCain is somewhere over here. And that whole time he's pointing at things and we can't see it because we don't have video. Okay. And then you traveled, oh wait, he says right where all the trails come together, he says. So, um yeah, right where all the trails come together. Okay. And then if you traveled down here, you're gonna get to the high bridge and then you said, where were the lights? They were on the other side. Does that mean this side here? Yeah, they were actually on this little service road. On that service road? Yeah, 'cause they pulled the fire truck down there. Oh, I see. So they were on this service road down here. Were they facing that way? Yeah. Okay. So was it bright enough that it would have illuminated this creek area? Yeah, some. Okay. You saw that there were tons of people out looking for the girls. Is that correct? There were several people out, yes. I think what you told me before was tons of people. I don't remember what I said before then. Okay, I don't want to bicker over terminology. Lots of flashlights? Yes. You don't know exactly where every flashlight was, but you saw lots of them. Correct. Okay. When you were searching for Libby between 10 and midnight, were you ever in the flat area looking around? Yeah, I mean, there was some flat areas. It's difficult. We get a lot of phone numbers that when we're checking out at different times for different things. Would you mind telling us what the last four digits of your phone number are so that I can compare it to other 9199? And that's what it was back then? Yes. When you were growing up, did you go out into those woods? No. So that was an unfamiliar territory to you. Right. Mr. Baldwin says, no questions, no other questions, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Diener says, no questions, Judge. So that'll do it for, do we have any? No, I think we're finished with him. So the court says, all right, thank you, Mr. German. You may step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is an appropriate time for us to take our afternoon recess. While you're outside of the courtroom, please keep your minds open. Please don't form any opinions and conclusions about anything. You may discuss the evidence. This is so bizarre to me. You may discuss the evidence that you've heard so far, but please only have those discussions if all 16 of you are present in the jury room at the same time, and then please don't deliberate. Wow. I just, does she let all of her juries? Does she give this instruction for all of the juries that they are allowed to communicate about the evidence in this case, as long as they don't deliberate and all 16 of them are in the room? So wild to me. Anyways, the court says, all right, we'll resume at 3:45. Please, Jody, you can go off the record. And she does. Now we've got some, oh, we're back on the record. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge, may I approach? The court says, yes. Now we have a sidebar. So everyone approaches the bench, and the jury is not privy to this conversation. And Mr. Baldwin says, is that Anna Williams going next? Miss Diener says, mm-hmm. Oh, we may need, related to an offer of proof for the other stuff, we may need at the very end to have the jury excused. So I don't know exactly how you want it done. An offer of proof that I would have some questions related to some of the things that you did not allow. Miss Auger says third parties. Mr. Baldwin says the third party stuff related to Anna Williams, and I don't want to deal with that now. I didn't know how because we haven't had. So, what third party relating to Anna Williams? I wonder if she knows someone that's in the circle of people that we've um, listed on my channel as third party suspects. I wonder if she's somehow related to like people in those groups, like maybe a boyfriend or a past relationship, even. I don't know. So I guess we're not going to find out because she took it out or she didn't allow any third party stuff for the defense here. All right. So the court says, well, it hasn't come up yet, has it? I mean, Mr. Baldwin says, no, 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 no. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining. There's some questions that we would like related to Patrick Westfall. That's it. So somehow Anna Williams has some relation to Patrick Westfall, or at least some some kind of tangential relationship for with him. It doesn't mean that she's like in a relationship with him, just somehow she knows him. And the court says, of whom? Mr. Baldwin says, I'm sorry, of whom? Of Anna Williams. Is she coming next? She's next. Okay. Mr. Baldwin says, and I'm just saying at the end of it, it might depend on how everybody wants to do it. The court says, okay. Mr. Baldwin says, I may ask for the court for me to have a hearing outside the presence of the jury to do, it won't be very long. Well, we're going to go for about 5. Okay. So I don't know how long this witness is going to take, and maybe that would be the natural time to do that. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. Mr. McClellan says, could you say that last part again, Judge? This is after they're going to testify, and that'll be our last witness? Well, I'm going until 5. Okay. The court says, so I don't know how long this witness is going to take, but maybe if it's. Ms. Diener says, it should be shorter. Okay. Than the others. But that may be at the point a natural. Everybody's cutting everybody off here. The bailiff says, quiet in the courtroom. Ms. Diener says it's not going to come up. Maybe it would come up if she was asked something. It's inaudible, so we don't know what she said there. Court says, okay. Mr. Baldwin says, I might just. And Ms. Diener says, in the presence of a jury. Court, court says, okay. See how confusing this is when everybody's talking over everybody? The court reporter can't get it all down. Mr. Baldwin says, oh, yeah, well, that's obvious. The court says, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mr. Baldwin says, that's why I'm up here now. I'm laughing because it's like reading back repetitive words like that. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it just feels so unnatural when you're not doing it in the moment for real, repeating your words. Anyways, so he says that's why I'm up here. The court says, okay. Mr. Baldwin says, thank you. Ms. Diener says, okay. The court says, thank you. Sidebar conference concluded. The court says, okay, can we bring the jury back in? We're ready. Hello, people. I'm speaking to you. Are we ready? Hello, people. I'm speaking to you, she says to the attorneys. Mr. McClellan says, yes, Your Honor. Mr. Rosie says, yes, Judge. Mr. McClellan says, sorry. The court says, thank you. The bailiff says, all rise. Jury is in the courtroom at 3:56 p.m. Bailiff says, thank you. You may be seated. The court says, thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Diener, you may call your next witness. The judge says, I have a preliminary, or I'm sorry, Ms. Diener says, Judge, I have a preliminary matter. The court says, yes. Ms. Diener says, the photograph I already published to the jury and was passed. I did make copies of that. The court says that was State's Exhibit 1. Yes. Can I give those to the court says, yes, yes, you may. And Ms. Diener finishes saying to the court or to and the court says, you may. Court says, ladies and gentlemen, you've already seen the photograph. So they're publishing Now, the state's Exhibit 1. It's going to be published for the jury and the people in the courtroom to see if they have a good view, anyways. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've already seen the photograph. That is your copy now. Just put that in your folders for your use in deliberations. So that is going to be, they have a hard copy too that they can look at for later. Ms. Diener says, Judge, the state would call Anna Williams. So now we are getting into the direct examination of Anna Williams, mother of Abby. All right, so Ms. Diener is again doing the questioning for the state, and she says, Good afternoon. Can you tell the court your full name? Anna Michelle Williams. And how do you spell Anna? Anna. And how do you spell Williams? And she spells it out. Okay, you are the mother of Abby Williams, is that correct? Yes, I am. And in February of 2017, were you and Abby living in the Delphi area? Yes, we were. So we've heard from a bunch of, not a bunch, I would say, three, specifically three, to be precise, witnesses for Libby, family members of Libby. So now we're going to finally hear someone who knew Abby well. Um, and in February of 2017, you and Abby were living in the Delphi area. Yes, we were. Were you in town or out in the country? We live out in the country. Were you living with other family members or just the two of you? Yes, we were at that time. And who did you live with? My mom, my stepdad, at least one of my sisters, and we had grandparents throughout different parts of the wintertime. And did you grow up in that area? We did not. We grew up in northern Michigan. So, what brought you and Abby Williams to the Delphi area? My dad was in a high school automotive. My dad was a high school automotive teacher, and he transferred to Lafayette College. And after my divorce in 2006, my daughter and I moved here when she was 2. So for Abby Williams, she was here for most of her life. Most of her life, yes. Did she attend the Delphi public schools? Yes. And in February of 2017, how old was she? 13. Now you lived in the country, so how did you get to school? She took the school bus. Did she take it both ways? 95% of the time, yes, unless she had an after-school sport, and then what would happen? She would stay after school and occasionally walk across the road where I work. To where you work? Mm-hmm. And so, where were you working at the time that would be across the street from the school? St. Elizabeth Healthcare. And what was your job here? I worked in the kitchen. I served lunch and food. Did you also have another job? I also bartended waitress part-time at the dock in Pittsburgh, just down the road. Okay. Did you have a set schedule at the St. Elizabeth Healthcare? Sometimes yes, sometimes not. And the job at the dock, would that be a particular day or time of days or days of the week? More mornings, afternoons, and evenings. What about weekends? Generally every other weekend unless I covered a shift for somebody. Okay, so let's talk about Abby first. How would you describe her for someone who didn't know her? She was a very kind-hearted little girl, helpful, funny, smart, quiet, reserved around strangers, but also one of her favorite things at home and in the public was, how can I help? What can I do to help? What can I do to help? Okay, how did she do in school? Fair to some extent. She loved to read. She had special things that she liked to do, and then other stuff, not quite as important, but she was always a good student and a good friend too. I mean, most of her teachers loved her. That's great. Did she have a large circle of friends, or did she keep a small group? I feel like she had a pretty small group of friends. She had the same the same kids mostly in band and in volleyball. She would have done softball with Libby that spring. The most of the same kids are all in the same group in that, not all of them, but most of them. Okay. And so would you have an opportunity then, back then, to get to know her friends in band and volleyball? To some extent, yes. I worked a lot of evenings and a lot of weekends, and I wasn't able to go to all of the games all of the times. But I knew the kids because they played volleyball 3 years in a row, so same girls. Would Abby have friends spend the night, or would she go to other people's houses? She was at her friend's house more than they stayed at our house. With my work schedule and her being with her grandparents, I didn't find it appropriate, or I didn't have people come and stay and have other people be responsible for her friends. Okay, if I couldn't be there. It would be more common for her to stay at a friend's house than for her to have people over. Yes. Simply because you weren't available to supervise. Correct. So you indicated that she was a participant in band and volleyball, and you said that she was going to be participating in softball. Did she have other school-related activities in addition to sports? Nothing much with the school. She had a few different church activities, but those were the only sports that she stuck with. Okay. Did Abby have a phone, a cell phone? She did not. And was that just a parental decision not to give her one? Correct. I decided that once she had joined softball and once she got into the high school, which finish up, she'd have finished up 8th grade. Once she got to high school, it would be necessary for us to maintain contact of when I would pick her up, drop her off, instead of her borrowing a phone and me not knowing, how much longer before the bus got there, etc. Okay, so up to this point, was it working pretty well that she didn't have one yet? It was fine. Now, you said that she was kind of shy, correct? Yes. And how was she as far as comfort level in communicating with adults that she did not know? Well, I pushed her to try to maintain contact once people spoke to her, even at 7, 8, 9. I said, well, so and so was talking. You need to look at them. It's important that you do that. You need to look at somebody when they're talking to you. I worked with her, but she wouldn't go out of her way to go up to a complete stranger most anywhere. When I worked at the nursing home, she might speak to an older resident, but that was about it. She didn't go out of her way to talk to folks she didn't know. What about her willingness to take risks? Was that brave? Was she cautious? Did lots of things that scare her? She loved roller coasters, and I guess heights didn't bother her as much as they bother me. Okay. What about something that was truly scary, though? A roller coaster is an amusement park ride. What about, let's say, the High Bridge? Are you familiar with the High Bridge? I was familiar with the High Bridge. We had been out there a couple of times before, her and I with our family. I never indicated any interest of going across the bridge and never knew that she had inclined to do so at all, ever. In fact, if she had asked permission to go across the bridge, absolutely not. Hmm. Yeah, same. Now, I assume you had a cell phone in 2017? Yes. And would you have had contact information for Becky Patty, Libby's grandmother, in order to communicate if the girls were together? Yes, but a lot of times they would have gotten a hold of me through Libby's phone. Okay, because Libby had your number. Yeah. Okay, and had you and Becky Patty communicated before because of things that the girls did together? I'm sure we did, though at the end of the day, it turns I didn't have her number in my phone, as in it wasn't saved with a name, but I'm sure we had uh, with her or with Kelsey. I mean, we'd communicated, maybe it was even on speakerphone, so the girls had the phones and we were just present for it. It's, and you mentioned Kelsey. We're talking about Kelsey German, correct? Yeah. And that would be Libby's older sister? Yes. Were you familiar with Kelsey? Yeah. And what was it that made you familiar with her? Abby had been over there before, and I remember that. On one of the other occasions, besides her traveling to Florida with them for spring break years prior, her saying, "Oh, yeah, we rode with Kelsey to go pick up a cake." And I was like, "Oh, okay, you know." I mean, she was an older sister. She was like our house. There was always kids coming and going to some extent. Did Abby have any siblings at that time? No. Would you characterize you and Abby as close? I would think so, yeah. So on the 13th of February 2017, do you remember it was a day when there was no school? Correct. And so had it's been clear from testimony that she spent the night with Libby the night before, correct? Yes. And so in the weekend just prior to that, had Abby been at home or what was she doing that weekend? My father came down from Michigan and she had spent the night prior to all of this with him picking up new softball gear for her. And so, where did she spend her time with her grandfather when she came down? Well, like they go shopping, but I don't believe this particular weekend they had stayed at the Brandywine Hotel in Monticello. She liked the pool there. Okay, and how many nights did she get to do that, if you remember? It's not important. It was at least Saturday night for sure. And then after she spent Saturday night with her grandfather at the hotel in Monticello, did you get to see her on Sunday before she went to Libby's house? Yes, we had. I picked her up. I think I had to get my tires worked on at Walmart, something. And then we came back into town and we met Libby down at the park. You remember being at the park? Yeah, we were at the park. I had Abby and Libby. Libby was there, and I cannot recall if I went and picked her up, if she met us there. I've never been able to recall that particular part. Okay. So you spent some time at the park. Yeah. Did Abby leave with Libby from the park? They left with me from the park. I brought them back to my house because in the car ride to me taking Libby home, it was asked if she could spend the night, and I said, "Well, I saw that coming, sure." She says, "Well, I have to get stuff." So I took her back to the house to get an overnight bag and paints and crafts, and I don't know. They took a bunch of little bags and boxes of stuff out of the house, and then I took them to Mike and Becky. Okay. So she's at Mike and Becky's. The next day is Monday. So what's your day look like? She didn't even explain like how were they trying to stay the night at Abby's house or at Libby's house? Maybe they were trying to stay at Libby's and she was asking, I don't know. They didn't quite clarify that. But anyways. Okay, so she's at Mike and Becky's now. The next day is Monday. So what's your day look like relative to the fact that she doesn't have any school? What's your plan? I am now working at Milner's Healthcare in Rossville, Indiana. On that particular day, and that was the morning shift, I think I talked to her on a break. She asked me if she could stay the rest of the afternoon, and I said, "Well, that's not a problem, except for I have to be at the bartending job just through the dinner shift, which should be about 8 o'clock. So either I pick you up here or pick you up before and I wait until after, and the conversation or I wait until after. And the conversation went back and forth, and Becky said it was fine that she stay until after dinner. And I said, "Okay, well, I'll just come pick her up as soon as I'm done then." Okay. And just so the jury's aware, the Dock is a restaurant located where? In Pittsburgh, Indiana. Just down the road, just across the bridge. Okay. Down that way. So from the courthouse to get to the dock, how long would you say it takes? Less than 5 minutes. And the park you were talking to is in town? Riley Park. Again, just down the road that way. And from town to your house, 3 miles. So everything's very close. Everything's very close. So on Monday, you know now that she's going to stay until 8 o'clock. Yes. Or when you're done with your shift. Approximately, yeah. Okay. At that point, do you know that she is at the High Bridge Trail? No. At what point do you learn that she had been at the trail? When I was at work that evening around 5:30ish, I think, Becky called me and said that the girls had gone out for a walk and they were supposed to get picked up and they had not returned and they had searched and can you meet me at the sheriff's department? When you got to speak with Becky, was this a conversation that you're talking about right now? Responds, the witness responded, nodding her head. Is that a yes? Yes. Okay. Sorry. When you had an opportunity to talk to her, could you tell from the phone that she had obviously tried to reach you multiple times? Yes, she had called my cell phone and I kept missing the call, whether it was dropping out from the location or I just didn't get to it in time, but she had called me like 3 times back to back within a very short period of time, like not within hours, just literally in 10, 15 minutes of calling. And you said that you were receiving calls, but you didn't have a name attached to her number. So, yes. So when you look at it, did you realize that it's Becky Patty? No. Okay. When you actually get to answer the call, is that the point at which you know that that number is now related to the previous calls? Yes. So do you go to the sheriff's department? Yes. And this is at 5:30ish. So do you just leave your shift and go at that point? Yeah, I had a couple of tables to close out. I kind of explained. I said, well, they've just called me, and I said, I don't know what these girls are up to, but it's probably not that big of a deal. But I'm going to go down there if I can come back. Transferred a couple of tables over to somebody else, and out the door I went. Okay. So you certainly didn't think that there was something horrific that happened. No. Had you ever had an issue where Abby disappeared before and you couldn't find her and then it turned out to be nothing? They'd had one incident prior to that in the high school gym. Libby and Abby did? Mm-hmm. Okay. What can you tell us about that? They were there watching a swim meet and neither of them were answering their phones and I'd I thought she'd gone home and that they'd changed their mind or that something had been canceled, but nobody was out front, nobody was at the house at my house. I couldn't get a hold of anybody, so I went back to the school and they just walked out from the basement of the school. I said, "You guys, I've been frantic." I said, "Please don't do that. Go where you're supposed to." And that was the only time that had not been but a year, but that's it. It was a year prior, if that. Okay, if that. That was not in their habit because they didn't go places by themselves. They were at the school for volleyball, they were at the school for meets and things like that. That was it. And so you talk about that like you were there to pick them up and they weren't outside. Correct. And so were you in communication with Libby on that particular instance because Abby didn't have a phone? Correct. And since you were the one picking them up, if Becky, Patty, or Kelsey didn't remember that particular incident, would it be because they weren't involved in the pickup? I wasn't actually picking them up. It was supposed to be me dropping the money off to Abby while they stayed for an event, and then nobody was there, and so I thought something had happened, of course. She couldn't have called me. Went home, came back to the school, talked with a few other parents. About 10, 15 minutes later, one of the parents had seen one of the girls and said, "Your mother is looking for you and you need to go outside." And they both marched out. Okay, so you were there to drop off money. Yep, for them to stay for an event. Okay. Other than that, had you had any concern about Abby, like not showing up when you needed to pick her up? No. Okay. Any concern about her being safe in the care of the Patty family? Absolutely not. No other questions. The court asks Miss, Mr. Baldwin to cross examine Anna Williams, and he does. All right, so he says, "Hi, Anna. How would you describe Abby's voice? Was it soft when she normally talked, or was it kind of average or louder? Any way you could describe it." I would say Abby's voice depended upon who she was speaking with. When she was with her family and her friends and her cousins, she spoke pretty candidly and pretty openly, but if you were to walk up and speak to her, she would probably go down to about this level and keep a pretty low tone. And did she have more of a high-pitched voice or a lower pitch? She was high-pitched when she got excited. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you. Ms. Diener? No redirect. The court says, "Does anybody on the jury have any questions for Ms. Williams?" There's no response or indication from any juror. The court says, "All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. You may step down. You may call your next witness." And our next witness, we're going to get into a bunch of law enforcement. So, oh, wait, before we get to that, they have a little, uh, they continue talking a little bit here. So Ms. Diener says, "Judge, the state didn't have any other witnesses scheduled for today." Oh, um, Mr. McLeland says, "Judge, yes, I can continue on if the court wants to. I thought there was going to be some other proceedings outside the presence of the jury, but I'm happy to continue on forward with witnesses." Mr. Baldwin says, "Can we approach?" The court says, "You want to go over here?" Over here. So now we're at a sidebar. And the court says, "So they told me that this is a recording, or that this is recording." And Ms. Diener says, "Okay, great." Mr. Baldwin says, "I'm not going to have Anna go through an examination which might not be very comfortable for her, and I don't really want that to come out. I'm going to rather introduce her deposition, and I can just do that at some other point in time." The court says, "Oh, okay." Mr. Baldwin says, "That will be a good way to do it, I think. I wanted to get more information out of her, but it's not worth it. It's just not." So Ms. Diener says, "Judge, may we have a moment to decide whether we want to agree to the deposition in place of her testimony for something in particular before we would agree or object? So if he goes ahead and does another witness and we readdress this issue, would that be permissible?" The court says, "She's still under subpoena, right?" Ms. Diener says, "And she's still under subpoena." So that, yeah, and she'll be here the rest of the day. The court says, "Okay, all right." Mr. Baldwin says, "Yeah, that's good." Ms. Diener says, "Yeah, I can bring her back in my," the court says, "Sure, sure." Ms. Diener says, "Yeah, I'll just tell her." Mr. McLeland says, "My next witness may go past 5 o'clock. Is that something you want to do, Judge?" The court says, "Yeah." Mr. McLeland says, "I know." Ms. Diener says, "Yeah, because the jury won't be here for the other part." The court says, "How far past 5?" Mr. McLeland says, "I don't know, Judge. That's what I'm worried about." "Who is it?" Mitch Catron. He's the first officer that responded to the call from the police department, so he's going to talk about. Mr. Baldwin says, "Jennifer's doing him. It's pretty long. I mean, from what I could tell." The court says, "Well, then, we may." Ms. Diener says, "We can do direct." Mr. McLeland says, "They did a deposition of him." The court says, "We may." So this is what they say in sidebar when we're not hearing what they're saying. um, in trials, they're just kind of all talking at once, apparently, it seems. Mr. McLeland says, "So I figured it was going to be lengthy. That's why." The court says, "Okay, well, maybe we'll do, I hate to do it, but I'd rather do a split like that of a professional witness than with a civilian witness, if you're all right with that." And Mr. Baldwin says, "Yeah." The court says, "Okay." Mr. McClellan says, "All right, Judge." The sidebar conference has concluded. The court says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a witness that we can call. It may be a rather lengthy witness, so we may have to split the witnesses direct and cross. And we'll just kind of play it by ear and see where we're at." Mr. McClelland says, "Judge, the state of Indiana will call Officer Mitch Catron." And that is where we're going to end. And we will continue that in the next episode. It's going to go into a bunch of law enforcement. I don't know. I haven't really figured out how it's all splitting up. If, I'm just to give you guys like half hour or an hour to like 2 hour segments here and there is probably what is going to happen, whether they're done with their testimony or not. So far, these first couple of episodes have worked out fine, but we'll definitely have to split people up in the future if they're on the stand for a while. So that's just how it's going to be. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. That has been Derrick German, the father of Libby, and Anna Williams, the mother of Libby, testifying in Indiana versus Richard Allen. We will continue tomorrow, starting with this Deputy Catron, and go from there. So thank you guys for watching. Take care. Bye now.